In this video, we're going to talk about the misconception of the so-called
and I was having a great
grip.
conversation with my buddy.
More misinformation.
And then I had
Enjoy.
an email came in about the same topic, strong grips. But before we unpack this, folks, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, thumbs up or thumbs down. That doesn't make a difference, but what does make a difference is you and your comments are you. All right, the strong grip dilemma, which is not a dilemma going on, right? So first, I like to break away from the common vernacular of what strong, weak, and neutral is, all right? So from when I teach strong grip, that's just me saying that a player matched on their balance and their release points, they have a stronger potential to compress the ball. I'm not talking about how many knuckles a player can see or anything like that, because that's very misleading. And the reason why it's misleading is grip size can change a strong grip into a neutral grip. Shaft lean can turn a strong grip into a neutral grip. So that's why I'm a very steer away from the term strong grip as far as how many knuckles you can see. Because if you're playing correct golf and you think about a player like has a so-called strong grip, it may be strong right here in the middle of their body. Once they add shaft lean, down look, I only can see 1.5 knuckles. What happened to that strong grip? It got neutralized. If I put 6 wraps underneath my grip and that strong grip all of a sudden becomes neutralized, right? So don't buy into the old school terminology. Again, it's all going to be matched up and balanced based on how a player releases and what kind of forces are they using. Are they using rotational and vertical? Those type players tend not to use as strong of a grip as a player that uses rotational and lateral, right? Rotational and lateral. They tend to use a more, what we call a stronger grip, what the industry would call a stronger grip. A player that uses vertical, rotational, and linear power, they somewhere in the middle. They usually right there hover around 2 knuckles, 2.5 knuckles. The key is knowing what your matchup is. Remember this, about 70% of players on the PGA Tour, the PGA Tour, will play what we consider a strong grip. 70% of the players on tour are playing what is considered a strong grip. Just know what your matchup is. Know what the neutralizer is. When I see most amateurs set up with a strong grip, they got the club right here. Now, that's a very strong, and it's actually turned to a weak grip. Because from here, you have to make a manipulation. But if I have this same strong grip, and then I add shaft lean, now I see 1 3/4 knuckles. Same grip, different shaft lean, turned the whole thing into a different ball of wax. Understand language, understand the matchups, understand that there are certain things that happen in the golf swing. When you go into a golf shop, all the clubs are leaning toward the target, right? Put your club on it. Put your grip on it, right there. You're good to go, right? Good to go. I heard Sean Clement say something, and I've used it before also. And I've used it before with clients. I said, I want you to visualize that you're riding an old school mountain bike. You're running over bumps and hills and everything, right? What grip are you going to have? Are you going to have a grip over here, right? A weak grip? No way. You would break your wrist. You know, you would get into a point where you could bounce on it. You're on a pogo stick, right? You're on a pogo stick. Boom, boom, boing, boing, doing, 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 right? I guarantee when you set that club down, you are in a very good position. All right, folks? Don't let it get confusing. Get your shaft lean. Now, how in the world is he hitting a cut shot with a 3-knuckle grip? Right? How does Dustin Johnson do it? Right? How do these guys hit these cut shots with these strong grips? Isn't that counterintuitive? Not at all. It's not counterintuitive. Not if you start understanding the dynamics that goes into this. Have you ever noticed a player that has a hook problem? They normally have a weak grip. Think about the players on tour that have a two-way miss. They normally have what we call a weak or a neutral grip. Now, again, get your shaft lean. That's the pro tip. Get your shaft lean. Another little fade. How in the world is he hitting fades with such a strong grip? So at the end of the day, just know that everything has matchups at the end of the day. And when we put the club in the correct position, and one thing that I've noticed that shaft lean is not talked about. Me and my buddy Steve had a good conversation about that, where we was like, nobody's really talking about shaft lean and how it can neutralize what is considered a strong grip. Let's hit on a couple things. Like we talk about Hogan's 5 lessons, right? A lot of people didn't know that it says Hogan's 5 lessons, apostrophe S. That's Hogan's 5 lessons. That was for Hogan's fingerprint. Jack Nicklaus, Golf My Way. That was Jack Nicklaus' fingerprint, Golf My Way. Make sure you're finding your fingerprint and make sure you're finding your swing DNA. Don't be afraid to change the vernacular. Strong is going to be whatever grip allows you to create the most force and velocity and compression through the strike zone. And that's going to be 100% dependent on your matchups. A player that uses rotational and vertical is probably not going to have as many knuckles showing. A player that uses more rotational and linear motion, they're got a tendency, their matchup is more shaft lean and more knuckles showing. A player that uses horizontal, vertical, and rotational, they kind of hover right there in the middle around 2 knuckles, all right? They really do. But it's all a matchup. Again, this is really important. If I build my grip up, my so-called strong grip gets neutralized. The more shaft lean I put into it, my strong grip gets neutralized. Now you can't go to a point of no return where you become a handle dragger. Take 1 aspirin, not the whole bottle. Just start, like I like to tell people, the butt end should point as a ground zero inside the target. And then get a little bit further. Get it where it's pointing in the middle of the thigh. Try that one. You may be surprised at how you compress the ball. All right? Glove in my fingers. My swing DNA. My swing DNA. Find your swing fingerprint, and find your swing DNA. And quit chasing other people's swing fingerprint. Peace. My swing DNA. My swing